If you have been watching this podcast, you may know the name Christian Walker, the Arizona Diamondbacks first baseman. He has been linked to the Washington Nationals in many different scenarios, and I have said absolutely no way. I do not want Christian Walker. I want Pete Alonso. But I'm here to tell you, I've changed my mind. I want Christian Walker.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can check us out over on Twitter at BrianClary11 and as well as the show page at LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, make sure to check us out over on Twitter. Later on in today's program, we will be discussing many different things on today's program, but it's really just the Christian Walker show. But I've been talking about this a lot as well. The Nationals need a backup catcher. Who could fill that void? There's a former name that you're familiar with who's a free agent who might be playing this season. I don't really know at this point, but stay tuned for that answer later on in today's program. Then in the second segment, we will have pros and cons of signing Christian Walker. There's a lot of good of signing Christian Walker, but there's also possibly a lot of not so great things. We'll discuss that a little bit later on, but before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So we get started today discussing why I've completely switched the script. If you've been watching this podcast, you probably go back to later shows over the last month since we've been talking about free agency since the bank has opened up here in DC. I was never in on Christian Walker, but I am now in on the possibility of signing a first baseman like Christian Walker. The reason why I've kind of changed this is, listen, I was not thrilled with that he is going to be 34 years old on opening day. Does he check the boxes of what we need? Yes, he does. But I really think the reason why I've kind of changed my mind on signing a Christian Walker and pivoting from the dream of having a Pete Alonso type is because of this ownership group. I do not think this ownership group will go out there and spend the $150 or $180 million what it will take to land a Pete Alonso type. That is really why this has come to this point. But here's also the main kind of gist of it. Christian Walker is not a bad baseball player whatsoever. This guy has won the last 3 Gold Gloves from the National League over at first base. He has been relatively pretty damn healthy over the last 3 seasons, and he has been productive both offensively and as well as defensively. His OPS over the last 3 years has been over 800. In 2023, when the Diamondbacks made a World Series run, he had an 830 OPS. Over the last 3 seasons as well, his OPS plus has been over 120. This guy is an above average major league hitter. This is someone who, if you were to drop in this lineup today for this Nationals team, he's your second best hitter, in my opinion, behind James Wood. I think James Wood is going to take off this season, and we can get into that way down the road here. But MLB.com, this is kind of where it gets a little tricky, though. MLB.com projected that he would make around 3 years, $60 million, whichever team that he were to sign. That's kind of the market that people expect him to be in. He's not going to get some lucrative 8-year deal. He's 34 years old on opening day this year. But I don't expect the Nationals to just sign him to a 3-year deal. If you have been watching this podcast or you've been listening, you know about a thing called the loser tax. The Nationals have to pay the loser tax, especially someone like a Christian Walker, who's going to be 34 years old. He's going to want to win a World Series. And let's be honest, this Nationals team, I don't think they're set up to win a World Series this season and maybe even not over the next two. You're really going to have to kind of sweeten that pot just a little bit by adding an extra year, adding a few more $1 million per season. And I think the Nationals could get him about a 4-year deal, roughly around $82 to $85 million. That is what I think it would take to get a Christian Walker type. And I think this ownership group would be willing to do that as well. I don't think they are willing to go after a Pete Alonso type. But also, the good thing about having Christian Walker is that this guy, if you look at all his stats, offensively speaking here, number one, he's going to be your best defender. He's been a Gold Glover each of the last 3 seasons. You've got that locked down. He's going to be this generation's of Adam LaRoche if you do sign him. Adam LaRoche was kind of thought upon to be someone who will be an impactful kind of player, but no one really expected him to be as impactful as what he was throughout the 2012 through 2014 with this Nationals team. Adam LaRoche was really good. He was great for us. He was a Gold Glover, Silver Slugger kind of guy over at first base, and really a team leader as well. I think that is what's going to happen. Forget the big splash of getting your Jason Worth. This is going to be your quote-unquote Jason Worth signing. And I think that's okay. And the reason why, again, why people have been kind of down, or at least I'm not going to speak for you, but I'll speak for myself. The reason why that I've been down on this idea is because of his age. For a young ball club, I would like to see this ownership group just kind of go out there and finally make a splash move. Just do something. And now is the time. But the reason why I have them kind of pinpointing Christian Walker is, number one, he is a good baseball player. He is someone that you want in this organization. He has made a World Series run. He has performed relatively well in the postseason. He's had some good moments. He plays Gold Glove defense. And as well, he hits bombs. He's hit 36 home runs back in 2022, 33 home runs in 2023, and this year, he hit 26 home runs in only 130 games, in which 2 years prior to that, he was healthy and hit 30-plus home runs. Christian Walker is someone that you want on this ball club. But the thing is that I cannot really get past with him is his age. How long will he be here to really kind of help this team and kind of breed a winner here in DC? I just don't know if he'll be here for the long haul. And I don't know if the Nationals are really kind of seeking that out at this point. If you are, then it would make more sense to go after a Pete Alonso type. But I don't think they're going to spend the money to do that. And if you do think they try to go after a Pete Alonso type, what makes you confident that the ownership group here in DC will go out there and splurge that kind of money on him? I don't think they will. And some people out there, I got a DM the other day, you might not want a Pete Alonso. He's bad defensively. He's great at the plate. He's going to hit 40 to 50 home runs every season. But other than that, what kind of use does he have? I think Pete Alonso, number one, defensively, yeah, he's not good over at first base. But also, the guy's going to solve a lot of issues offensively and provide 40 to 50 home runs. Someone has proven that he can stay healthy and play 162 games a year for a really bad Mets team over the last few seasons here, besides this past one, as we all know. They made a nice little run. But Pete Alonso would be my choice. But I am now open to the idea of getting Christian Walker here in DC. It makes sense. And I think it would be an overall good thing for this organization because, number one, you need someone in here that's going to help these young guys. And number two, he's a good ball player. I can sign up for that at this point. I will be just fine if the Nationals go out there and sign a Christian Walker. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. I've got some pros and I've got some cons. You may have heard some of them in this first segment, but we got to list them out for you because there are a lot of pros, but there also are some cons with signing Christian Walker. I'll discuss that as we tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, and get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And tomorrow night, you've got the Packers going up against the Detroit Lions. I've got the Lions on the money line. And I've also got a David Montgomery anytime touchdown score. You can make that a parlay. And when you do that, you go over to FanDuel.com, which is America's #1 sportsbook, and never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And we get back into it with some pros and cons of signing Christian Walker. There's some pros, but there's also some cons. Let's start with the negative first. Let's end on a good note here with Christian Walker. Here's the #1 con. He's 34 years old on opening day. I mentioned that in here in the first segment. The reason why the main reason why I would not want to sign Christian Walker is having someone who is 34 years old. This is not like that bad of a deal, considering that this guy really hasn't played that much baseball over the last few years. He's been in the bigs since 2014, where he made his debut with the Baltimore Orioles, and spent 2 years in 2016, never touched the majors again, played 7 games in 2015 for the Orioles. So there's kind of a weird thing here. He is now just a free agent after breaking out with the Diamondbacks, in which this guy was a legit very good baseball player. But Christian Walker here, I don't know why this really holds me back, considering, listen, this guy may have some good baseball left in him. He's 34 years old. That right then and there just kind of scares me away a little bit, because I don't know if this is going to be some empty calorie signing. Is he really going to help us down the line? Like when the Nationals are probably going to be making World Series runs in the next 3-4 seasons, when he's 37 years old, 38 years old, will he even be in this organization then? Will he be healthy? These are all questions that I have for a 34-year-old. That is my #1 con. My #2, I don't know if this guy's going to be someone who will help us in 6 to 10 years, like I wanted with a Pete Alonso. Again, it has to do with the age. But is he really going to be here in DC in 6 seasons from now when he's 40 years old, hitting 30-plus home runs a year? I'm going to bet against it. And he might be. He might just be hitting the best part of his career, because he has had some great seasons over the last 3 years, and he's broken out in his mid-30s. Maybe that's just what he is. But also, I can't really look beyond that point. Because again, I want someone who is young. I want someone who will be here in the next 6 to 10 years and who will be the captain of this team, who will be the leader in the clubhouse. And Christian Walker could be that for the short term, but I wanted it for the long term. And he, at 34, is not going to be here for the long term. It'll be a few years. But again, I don't know how much that helps me, and I don't know how much that helps James Wood and Dylan Cruz in the year of 2027 or 2028 and beyond. Those are the kind of things that I think about. And I think this is also what the Nationals have to think about as well. Now, are you willing to open up the checkbook on a Christian Walker and, just splurge money over the next 3 years? Sure. He's a good player. But I want someone who's going to be young and who will be in this organization and be the team leader and kind of be the catalyst as to why the Nationals make their next World Series run. I'm not sure if in this time frame over the next 3 seasons, we will be in that position. I'm sure we could be, but it's going to have to start off with some savvy moves, and maybe Christian Walker is one of those. The last con that I have for him, I think his best days might be behind him. And again, it goes back to his age. But here's the thing. Christian Walker, he's had these 3 exceptional seasons with Arizona. And even then, He had some good ones as well back in 2019 with them. In 2020, he had some good years. Like, he's had good seasons overall. 2021, he was not good. He only had 10 home runs that year, at a 696 OPS, an 88 OPS plus. But since then, over the last 3 seasons, he's won a Gold Glove at the first base position. He was a Silver Slugger kind of guy in 2023 and led them to the World Series, hit home runs, and was a great, well-rounded baseball player. But is he starting to hit that decline in your mid-30s? Because, again, there is just proof. There's proof here in the pudding. How much longer does he have to make a great impact? I think that's going to be the big, overwhelming question with him. Now let's get into the positives. Pro, he will be our big bat that we have wanted. He is going to be your quote-unquote cleanup hitter, batting fourth, right behind James Wood, right behind CJ Abrams and Dylan Cruz and all the other young guys who will be coming up in this rebuild. He will be that big bat that will hit those guys home, who will have 100 RBIs, who will hit 25 plus home runs a season if he's healthy. Those are the things that we have wanted. Another pro, he's an experienced team leader and has made a postseason run before, has made it to the World Series, fell short against the Rangers, and he is going to help us out in a big way as far as leadership goes. He has been through it before. He's kind of like the Diamondbacks version of Lane Thomas a little bit. So when I believe was drafted in the 4th round back over a decade ago, and took some time for him to get up into the majors. Once he had finally got his starting opportunity, he ran with it, and he was good. A Gold Glover type. Lane Thomas has been a Gold Glove kind of guy as well. Lane Thomas is no longer with the organization as we traded him to Cleveland, but you get the point here. This could just be one of those things where he's breaking out right at the right time, and maybe you have this guy who could be here for the long run. Another pro that we mentioned in the first segment, he will be this generation's Adam LaRoche. When I was a kid, which is hard to say, I'm 25 years old now. When I was a kid, Adam LaRoche was the guy here. He was your first baseman. He was your Gold Glover type. He was the guy that you wanted to be the team leader. He was the man, right behind Ryan Zimmerman and Bryce Harper, of course. Adam LaRoche was a great baseball player. He had some down years, but he also had some great seasons here in DC. I think Christian Walker kind of fits that category where I wanted to go out and get your Jason Worth. You're not going to get Jason Worth this year. You're going to get your Adam LaRoche, which in this case is Christian Walker. I think Christian Walker will kind of fit that role of being a great first baseman, being a team leader, and also providing power at the plate, which is much needed. Last but not least, he has a much needed right-handed bat to help Abrams, Wood, and Cruz. And again, this goes back into what I've been saying. The Nationals, you need help offensively. You also need help defensively as well. Adding a Gold Glove first baseman, remember Dominic Smith just a few seasons ago. What it did to the pitching staff. While the results weren't incredible, you still won 71 games in that 2023 season. Dominic Smith did nothing at the plate to help us out. But defensively speaking, Abrams took big steps up. Luis Garcia looked like a pretty damn good fielder. And I think a lot of that, I'm not going to give all the credit in the world to Dominic Smith, but still, Dominic Smith saved the day plenty of times that year at first base. Defensively speaking, he was up there as one of the better first basemen in all of baseball. He still is, by the way. And I think that is going to help this Nationals team a lot. But also getting into the offensive side of it, where I really care about and what I really want to see the Nationals address this offseason, you're going to get a much-needed kind of right-handed power-hitting guy. You've got James Wood to be your lefty. You need that righty. Christian Walker will fill that. And, of course, will also fill the defensive side of things. So, you've heard the pros and you've heard the cons. You've heard 20 minutes worth of Christian Walker talk here on Locked On Nationals. Have you bought into the idea of the Nationals potentially going out there and splurging on a Christian Walker type? I'd love to hear your answer. Tweet at me at Ryan Clary11 or drop a comment in the YouTube section of this podcast. Just search up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcast. Now, the Nationals, they need a backup catcher, and there's a name that you're familiar with that I'm going to tell you about after this. Now, the Nats, as we were saying, they need a backup catcher. Who could it be? What if I told you about a name? Yan Gomes. Now, Yan Gomes is not at the top of my list. Let me just make that clear. And Yan Gomes, in fact, was DFA'd by the Cubs this year. He did not have a good season. But with that said, Yan Gomes is still someone who has been in the organization for a while, who has played with the Nationals before, has played with Davey Martinez for, a couple years, won a World Series here, has the game-winning ball of that Game 7 of World Series in 2019. But he's coming off a year where he batted 154 in 34 games. Last year in 2023, had a good season. But here's the thing with Yan Gomes, and here's the thing with needing a backup catcher. His better days are behind him. I think we can all kind of understand that at this point. But also the thing with Yan Gomes is he knows just pitchers. Like Yan Gomes, when he was with the Nationals, the pitching staff just seemed to be better. Yan Gomes is an experienced guy who has been in very good organizations in years past, whether it was the Cleveland Guardians back in the day where he was pitching and catching for all those different guys, made a World Series run with them, fell to the Cubs in 2016, came over to the Nationals in 2019, won the World Series here. Yan Gomes is an experienced guy who has worked with some phenomenal pitchers over the year, and he knows how to play that catcher's position at a pretty premium rate. Now, if you look at his numbers over the last few seasons, yes, they have declined. Yes, he's not at the top of his game. But I think this with Yan Gomes, it's going to add just a lot of things that you will need, not just on the diamond, but off of it. Number one is leadership. You know that he's going to provide leadership. And again, Keibert Ruiz, he needs that at this point. You need to have that veteran presence who has been there and who has done that in this organization. Sean Doolittle has kind of provided that voice for the Nationals. Could Yan Gomes be that minor league invite that you just say, listen, man, come into spring training here, compete for that second spot for the catcher position, see how you were doing. You've been in this organization before. You have won with this team. You have won with Davey Martinez at the top of the org, and you have Mike Rizzo, who's still here in town. Why not run it back? Now, with all that said, he's not my number one choice at this point. It was Travis d'Arnaud, but now my second choice is James McCann, a free agent who signed with the Mets a few years ago, and they all thought it was a big bust of a signing, and the Orioles took him on. Pretty solid defensively, fine offensively speaking, but James McCann would probably be my number one choice. But the Nationals, an underrated storyline of this year and of this free agency is that I think you need a veteran presence to help Keibert Ruiz. Yan Gomes, seeing him out there, it makes a lot of sense. Now, will the Nationals find better value out there? I'm sure they can. Do I just like Yan Gomes? Maybe I just do. But the Nationals, you need some help defensively speaking as far as your catcher position goes. I think Yan Gomes can help you out in that category. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day. Don't forget to subscribe to Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, I will catch you on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.